achieved.
So on one hand, we've got a legend who's walking away from the game in controversial fashion. On the other hand, we've got a legend who can't seem to walk away, or at least stay away, and it's controversial for that reason. The first guy I'm talking about, of course, Tito Ortiz, who successfully, quote-unquote, ended his career with a submission victory in the first round over Chael Sonnen under the Bellator ban of the longtime UFC competitor, former UFC light heavyweight champion. The Huntington Beach bad boy walks away from the sport after a long and storied career. He goes on a high note. I believe he won 3 consecutive bouts to finish his professional run. That fight with Chael Sonnen, I didn't predict the fights officially. I had several people write me and ask me who I thought was going to win. I said Tito was the bet to make, considering he was the underdog and Chael's been out of action for three years. It seemed like it was the right move to make. It worked out. Still, a lot of people are looking at it saying, was it fixed? And I like the counterpoint to saying no, because it was a very weird, very odd submission. Not clean whatsoever, not a clean rear naked choke. And the counterpoint to the fixed argument is that, if these two guys fix this fight and we're going to set it up, why not just position yourself so it's a no doubt about it, very easy to see and recognize choke? Why would they go about it in controversial fashion if they were working together? That's a good point. At the same time, it just looked like a choke that wasn't really sunk in 100%, wasn't under the neck, wasn't really putting a lot of pressure on Chael's head. Chael's head face was turning red, but nonetheless, he tapped. It is what it is. It's a finish. It would have been much nicer to see Tito go out with one of his guard, top position hammer fist smashes for, what he's known for, that top position ground and pound for a victory. But hey, take it for what it is. It's a good story, and that's great. The other fighter I'm talking about, BJ Penn, unfortunately for him, getting knocked out, losing via TKO to Yair Rodriguez in the main event of UFC Fight Night 103. He looked completely outclassed, and a lot of people are saying it was just he might not be done as far as competition, but he's not in that class anymore. Yair Rodriguez was heads and tails above him. BJ, if he's going to continue fighting, must fight more appropriate competition. And as you saw, a lot of people talked about, it was once a fight that was put together. I said it in my fights to make after the event. Dennis Siever might be a more appropriate opponent, somebody who, isn't that far advanced. BJ's always had trouble with guys in that type of skill set, that rangy striker, that somebody, just quicker, faster, able to do more. It just was too much for him. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson. On this episode of the show, we're bringing the upcoming UFC on Fox 23 event, which will take place on January, and the 4 main card predictions. On this episode of the show, all of my preliminary picks will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net as always, so please check them out. I am coming off a fantastic start to 2017. It was huge, if you will. Huge, and I know huge. It was huge. I went 10-2, losing one fight under one underdog pick, and a very controversial Court McGee matchup that I felt Court won. Obviously, he won the third round. I felt he did more in the second round. Ben was the better fighter in the first round. Court was a little ineffectual with his techniques. Ben started off the second round well. I thought Court picked it up and probably could have been awarded the second round with activity rate. Cost me a lot of money, cost my predictors a lot of money. Nonetheless, we came out with a pretty good standing. Just quickly looking at the numbers. The big bankroll parlays combined to win 60.57 units. So a profit of a sizable profit. We bet about 30.5 units, so not quite 2-1, but still a pretty good return on the night. The big reward bankroll, 61.62 units. So more than doubling your money. You invested 25.5 units to get that. Had Court McGee won, it played a big role. It would have put us through the roof. Nonetheless, it was a pretty good night overall. You can buy my bet pack for UFC on Fox to get another solid lineup of betting options. $15 for my bet pack, which completely breaks down all the fights. Gives you a DraftKings lineup as well. I post that. I do all the research for you. I do all the looking at fighters and watching tape and going back to old notes. I do all that for you. You just got to show up, put the bets in place, and see how it turns out. If you don't want to pay $15 per card, you can subscribe, and you can get it. Last week, it was $11 per card. The discount varies as we get closer to the end of the subscription. There's going to be 4 more cards, and you'll probably save anywhere from $10 to $15 again on this event. So please check that out. We've got 4 pretty interesting fights to break down, so let's get to that first matchup. The first fight of the night takes place in the UFC's featherweight division as Alex Bruce Leroy Caceres, 12 wins, 9 losses, 1 no contest, takes on the quick-rising Jason the Kid Knight with a fairly solid record of 18 wins and just 2 defeats through the first 20 pro fights of his career. Now, Knight is coming off an upset over Daniel Hooker, an upset I correctly predicted. He has won back-to-back fights after a debut loss, which he took on short notice against Tetsuya Kawajiri. For Caceres, he is 2-0 since returning to featherweight. He had dropped a couple of split decisions prior to that, and he's 2-4 over his last 6 fights, so certainly was a good move for him. Obviously, losing to Yair Rodriguez in his last matchup, which was pretty disappointing. It was a split decision as well. Both guys are 5'10". Alex Caceres will have a 2-inch reach advantage, and Knight is the younger man by 4 years. Now, looking at the numbers quickly, Jason Knight, 9 wins by submission, but he has just won in his last 6 fights, which usually is indicative of a step up in competition. For Bruce Leroy, he's got 5 wins by submission, so he's a capable grappler as well, but he's also been tapped out 5 times. We've seen that those numbers, spread out a little bit. His last one coming against Uriah Faber, and he's improved his grappling defense. Alex Caceres also 5-3 on the scorecards. 2 of his 3 career losses in decisions are by split decision, as previously mentioned. Now, for Caceres, he tends to be a bit of an unorthodox striker. Lots of techniques. He looked very sharp in his win over Cole Miller recently. He looked good against Yair Rodriguez as well, who's a very good talent. We talked about him in the intro. When he fought Miller, he dropped him with a short left hand. He was doing a very nice job of stepping in with that straight left to really put some emphasis behind it. His kicking game was on point with some good head kicks, body kicks, throwing some nice punch kick combinations as well, which was very, it's nice to see him mix those strikes up and really put a little pop behind his techniques. He was having a lot of success when he was moving in. He moves a lot generally, and he will throw some spinning techniques, some spinning back fists, some turning side kicks, which can be, throw a lot of opponents off. He was doing a good job of recognizing and avoiding Yair Rodriguez's kicking techniques. Yair throws a lot of variety, throws it very quickly, and Caceres was avoiding a lot. He was getting hit with his fair share, but he was doing a good job of avoiding a lot of it as well, so it shows how good he is at recognizing his opponent's offense. Caceres tends to be a bit of a below-average wrestler, but he's a very good scrambler. He's an opportunistic grappler. If you give him the opportunity to get on top, if you take him down, if you're not careful in top position, he will capitalize and you will be in trouble. We have seen him pick up the tempo a little bit with his wrestling of late. He then had some takedowns against Miller. He shucked off a couple attempts as well. And, Miller didn't have a lot of success in that fight until the 3rd round where he was able to get him down. But still, Alex Caceres working to round out his game. Now looking at Jason Knight. He is a very aggressive, forward-first fighter. Constantly pressuring lots of punches, moves forward, throws his hands up in the air, talks to his opponents, really looks to get in their head. At the same time, speaking of head, he doesn't move his very much. He tends to hold his head on the center line, which can lead him to getting cracked. He likes to sit at close range and trade and look to get the better of the exchanges, both with his durability and his power. He tends to wear damage as well. We've seen him in his last couple of fights. I picked him both over Allers and Hooker. He gets cut, he wears some damage, it shows up, and that's something in a fight that's close that can hurt against him. Technique-wise, he threw a nice left jab routinely against Allers. He will double and triple it up and then fire a pretty hefty straight right. He dropped Daniel Hooker early on with the right hand. He throws some nice kicks to the body. He'll throw round kicks and push kicks, both to the midsection. He tends to come up short, though, when he's striking. He throws a lot of volume, not always successful. He falls short, which can wear on his cardio. We've seen him slow down a little bit in fights and can also open him up to getting counter-striked. When Daniel Hooker was pushing forward and engaging, he was landing some decent strikes. He just wasn't doing it enough. And Jim Allers, at the same time, he slowed down too much and allowed Knight to really get the better of those exchanges. The other option Knight has to go to is his wrestling, which was undervalued, but I think people really recognize it now. After the Hooker fight, it's something I talked about. He landed a couple nice reactive double leg takedowns to put Hooker on the mat. He keeps driving and eventually takes your base out from underneath you and plants you down on the floor. Now, he did lose position against Hooker a couple of times, and he was taken down 4 times by Jim Allers and 6 times by Tetsuya Kawajiri. So he's a guy who can, it's feast or famine. He can take guys down and capitalize. He can also be put on his back. Now, if he does get taken down, he's certainly not helpless. He will work the rubber guard, attack off his back, and look to either tie his opponent up and get a stand-up, attack with a submission, or possibly sweep to top position. But again, spending too much time on your back is not a winning formula. Although we have seen lately guys getting the job done, for example, Neil Magny and Joe Lozon, with some activity off of their back. One thing I've seen with Knight is while he's still active in the second half of his matchups, he tends to be a little bit more labored. As Hooker was pushing forward and pressuring him, you saw Knight slowing down. His body motion wasn't nearly as crisp and pumped up as it was early in that fight. And that's something, despite the fact he was the front runner early on, he still wears on his side. His style is very cardio consuming. With Caceres, his style is very loose, very open, very cardio friendly. He handles pressure very well. He won't be bothered by the head games of a guy like Jason Knight who's going to push forward and try and get in his face and talk to him and kind of throw him off his game. That's something I think Caceres will handle very well. I like the lateral movement of Bruce Leroy. He tends to move himself at distance to the outside and keep circling away and not standing in one place at the same time to let his opponent continually attack. He throws some nice distance weapons. He gets some pretty good extension on his strikes when he wants to from the outside. I said he can move in and do some damage inside, but I really like his kicks and his long limbs to really do some, have an effect here. I think Knight's tendency to throw strikes and his willingness to throw strikes just for the sake of throwing them, not necessarily hitting, is going to cost him here. He's going to wear down as the fight progresses. He's going to have trouble reaching Alex Caceres at times, even though the reach and height's not that different. Bruce Leroy needs to avoid those early takedowns, and I think he's going to find success with his kicks. He's going to force Jason Knight to work. He's going to land more strikes as the fight advances, and my prediction is Bruce Leroy to defeat Jason Knight. It's going to be a close, competitive fight. I'll take Bruce Leroy by decision. Watch for that late split, though. Bruce Leroy in this fight. Fight number 2 in the main card takes us to the UFC's heavyweight division as the former heavyweight champion and number 7th ranked Andrei Arlovski, the Pitbull, if you will. 25 wins, 13 losses, and 1 no contest, fighting, well, at least hailing from Belarus. Takes on the 10th ranked Francis of the Predator Ngannou, formerly of Cameroon, now fighting out of France. He comes in with a record of 9 wins and just a single loss. Now, Ngannou is getting a huge opportunity to add a very big name and a former champion to his resume and continue to build his push into the upper echelon of the division. You can see the UFC has plans for this guy. He's just the prototypical big, strong, dangerous, nasty-looking heavyweight. He's got the whole toolbox by the looks of it, or at least so far. Arlovski, his climb back into relevance has hit a wall. He's lost 3 consecutive fights, all via finishes, including a pair of knockouts, which was an issue that he had got over. But honestly, did we really expect Andrei to climb back into title contention? He was close. He was close. He was in title contention. He was close. He couldn't get that win to push him over the top. Looking at how they physically match up, and Ngannou is 7 years younger than Arlovski. He's 1 inch taller. He'll have a sizable 6-inch reach advantage, and he should weigh in 10 to 15 pounds heavier. I would give Arlovski maybe a foot speed advantage, but Ngannou's a pretty fast guy in his own right. He moves pretty well for a big man. Now the Frenchman comes in with an impressive submission victory. He has 5 wins by knockout on his record. His last win pushed him to 4 wins by submission. He has never fought beyond the second round. His only loss was a 2-round decision defeat earlier in his career. Arlovski, big number, 17 wins by knockout, damn impressive. Equally as, numerically not as big a number, but probably as more significant, 9 losses by knockout. We've talked about that, ad nauseum in any breakdown on Arlovski. You talk about his chin. He's shown he can take a punch. It's not just a case you touch him, he's done, but it's there to be had. 39 career fights at heavyweight is a heck of a lot of fights. This will be his 40th appearance as a professional fighter. That's a lot of mileage on for a heavyweight and for a guy who tends to be a striker and really bang it out. For Ngannou, he is a physically massive man. He hits exceptionally hard. He moves fairly well. He's a pretty agile guy for a big man. He has some grappling experience outside of mixed martial arts, so he's not a native to the MMA game. Throws a very big right hand. He'll work with a nice left hook in combination. Long left uppercut as well. Gets good extension. Still doesn't overextend to the point where he's off balance. Gets good pop on it. He's got a straight left he'll work in as well, and a counter. We saw him throw some counter lefts earlier in his UFC run against low kicks that can really do a lot of damage if they connect. Put his opponent in danger, if you will. Henrique took him with a massive uppercut that just destroyed him when he fought his last matchup against Mihailovic. He cut off the cage very well before finishing him. Really put a lot of pressure on him, swarmed him, unloaded with ground and pound. And the guy that size raining down blows on you, it's difficult for you to defend other than covering up, which will eventually bring about a stoppage. I like how effective he is as a striker. He's not just a bull rusher. He shows a lot of fakes and feints to really draw out his opponent's attacks. He's very patient. He waits for openings. He doesn't overextend himself. He doesn't punch himself out if he gets the opportunity to finish a guy. He'll continue to look for the appropriate openings before he actually goes for that finish. If his opponent clinches up, he throws some hard knees on the inside of the body. He'll go to the thigh as well. He's got big ground and pound, as I mentioned, from top position if he gets on top of you. He has had success shutting down most of the takedowns he's faced in the UFC. Not all of them. If he does get put on his back, he's pretty good at getting back up. He's had a couple times where he's spent a little bit too much time on his back, but still, for the most part, he's pretty good off his back at neutralizing his opponent's top game. Overall, or in his last, he's a very sound fighter. Against Anthony Hamilton, he showed a very impressive combination of physical strength and technique to out-muscle Hamilton, force him to that, and lock up, I believe it was Kimura for the finish. Just damn impressive. Really, you don't expect to see submissions really catch people off guard as impressive as that one was, and that's what this was. Big question is, he's taking a step out of competition. How will he fare? Andrei Arlovski, The guy's a veteran. He's a legend. He's been around for a long time. He's had a good run. He's been to the top of the mountain. He's definitely at the end of his run here now. He's had two types of fights in the UFC. Either slow, boring decisions like we saw against Brendan Schaub and Frank Mir, or these brawls where he was having a lot of success stopping opponents. He was winning a couple of them early on, knocking guys out relatively quickly. But then we saw him against Stipe get put down. Alistair Overeem knocked him out, which made me a hell of a lot of money. And Josh Barnett eventually submitting him after a pretty violent back and forth fight. Barnett's not the fighter he used to be, and Arlovski held his own for quite a while, but eventually he just got worn down, exhausted, and finished. Arlovski, we've seen of late try to be a bit of a fast starter, really see if he can get his opponent out of there quickly, but if he can't finish his opponent, he struggles to maintain, he slows down, and then his opponent can kind of push back and really take over that fight. He still has very sound boxing skills defensively, some issues there, but as long as he's standing, his chin is a constant point of attack and a constant point of vulnerability. I wouldn't be shocked to see him try and take this fight to the mat, try and get in top position, force Ngannou to work off his back, maybe wear him out a little bit, get some muscle or get some blood flowing in those big muscles and slow the guy down. I would say Andrei needs the early finish to win the matchup. If he slows down against Ngannou, he's either going to drop a decision, which is fairly unlikely, but he's either going to get outworked for the most part, or he's going to get stopped, which is definitely more likely. And Ngannou needs to be very careful of that early push. At heavyweight, all it takes is one shot. Arlovski certainly has that punching power. Could he get overwhelmed by that pressure by Arlovski? It's quite possible. He has shown good poise so far under pressure and done a good job of mitigating that attack from his opponent. I would say Francis Ngannou simply hits too hard. He's too technical. He's too skilled. And he's too big and he's too young at this point for a guy like Andrei Arlovski to take out. So my prediction is Francis Ngannou to defeat Andrei Arlovski by knockout. We move now to the co-main event of the evening, and it's going to be a heck of a fun scrap as the 5th-ranked former lightweight title challenger, now 5th-ranked welterweight Donald the Cowboy Cerrone, 32 wins, 7 losses, and 1 no contest, takes on the 12th-ranked welterweight Jorge Gamebred Masvidal, also a former lightweight, former Strikeforce title challenger, 31 wins and 11 losses. Now, both guys said former lightweights. They've jumped up to welterweight and had, degrees of success. Cerrone, a lot of success. Masvidal certainly holding his own. Cerrone is 4-0 since moving 170 pounds with 4 victories by finish and has taken out some decent names during his current run. This is impressive. Over his last 15 fights, and considering the caliber of opposition Cowboy has faced, he has just a pair of losses over his last 15 matchups, both coming against Raphael dos Anjos, one for the title. So very impressive. For Masvidal, since bumping up to 170 pounds, he's 3-2. He's coming off a really odd TKO finish of Jake Ellenberger. Very weird with that whole cage incident where he got his foot stuck in the cage. It was what it was. I hope they amend those rules to make sure it's just a stop, fix, and restart. Just like as if someone's foot got caught in another fighter's shorts, you would rectify it and continue on. Cerrone is 2 inches taller. Masvidal will have a 1-inch reach advantage, and Jorge is a year younger than his opponent. Now, both men have a ton of experience. 82 combined fights. They've seen it all. There's not a lot that's going to frazzle either one of these fighters. They come in, you know what you're getting with both guys. It should be a hell of a scrap. Both are capable of fighting anywhere, and the records would indicate... Actually, they don't necessarily indicate how well-rounded these two individuals are. Cerrone, 16 wins by submission. Damn impressive. He also has 8 wins by knockout, 8-4 in the scorecards. Now, of those 8 wins by knockout, 6 of those 8 wins have come since 2014. So he has really... in the past, he's shown he can knock guys down and hurt them, possibly finish them. He followed up. He usually went for submissions. Now he's just starching guys when he finishes them. He's taken an impressive list of guys since 2014. Very, just really added another dimension to his game. For Masvidal, he's got power too. 12 wins by knockout, 2-2 in fights ended by submission, but he's shown himself quite capable of competing on the mat both as a wrestler and a grappler. He is 17-8 on scorecards, so certainly you see it's 25 career bouts going the distance, which is, it's a lot, and he's won a large portion of them, but still 8 losses tells you there are fights, and we've seen him several times where he has a little bit of trouble convincing the judges he is the better man. He is 1-3 in his last 4 fights to go the distance, including 3 split decision losses, which has to be frustrating. Masvidal, for the most part, is a boxer. He's got good pop in his hands, strong offensive and defensive wrestling, and I said he's a pretty good grappler in his own right. He has been rocked in several fights. We've seen him hurt in several fights, but he rallies. He's very smart. He makes a lot of adjustments on the fly. He was getting cracked by Jake Ellenberger, but still, he's a very smart and just a savvy veteran fighter. Never an easy out for any opponent. He throws a good left jab. He can do it while moving backwards. He'll also mix in a counter left hook, which can really do a lot of damage for an opponent who's pushing forward too aggressively. He tends to be a bit of a pocket puncher. He'll work to the body, which is a nice technique to have. He was throwing a lot of kicks against Jake Ellenberger, a lot of stuff that landed to the lower half of the body, and then eventually going up high. The body kicks could be a weapon against Cerrone, who has been known to be vulnerable to the midsection, and we could see Masvidal look to exploit that. Jorge will also throw some jumping knees. He'll go, I said, he'll throw low kicks, try and take away his opponent's balance. He mixes up his offense fairly well. He also does a good job of moving well under pressure. He sees strikes coming, can take that step back, just slide out of range, avoid taking damage, and then go back on the offensive. When he fought Jake Ellenberger, he was having a lot of success pressing forward, being a lot more aggressive. He wanted to avoid those tight decisions. You saw that uptick in offense, that uptick in aggressive movement, and he was having a lot of success cutting off the cage and engaging Jake and really pressuring him and landing a whole bunch of strikes along the cage before eventually getting the finish. For Donald Cerrone, he is a freaking lethal Muay Thai monster as far as MMA is concerned. Hard kicks, combination striker, dangerous at close range or at distance. He can do it all. He's very effective. I love his knee strikes. They are a nasty, nasty weapon. A nice counter stepping knee up the middle can really do a lot of damage to a guy who likes to move forward too much. He'll throw push kicks, both low and he'll throw low kicks. He'll throw push kicks. He'll go to the midsection as well with a round kick. All techniques that can do damage and really change a fight. He sets up his kicks by targeting other areas. He'll attack the body, he'll come to the head. He'll go low, and then he'll attack the body. He forces his opponents to defend, and then comes with a different attack to a different part of the body that you're not expecting and you're not, defending against. We have seen him rely on his kicks a lot to either turn fights in his, simply win fights by knocking guys out, or turn fights in his favor by, really compromising his opponent's movement by attacking their lower half and really changing the trajectory of a fight that maybe isn't going his way. When he fought Rick Story, he used a brutal combination to take him out. Body and head punches, working in a head kick as well. Very accurate, very quick, and that speed has been a big factor for him since moving to welterweight. When he fought Matt Brown as a very dangerous fighter, it was the speed and variety that for Cerrone got the better of the Immortal One in that matchup. He threw low kicks. He attacked the body again. He would go high. Matt Brown really didn't know what to defend against. He was getting cracked with a lot of shots. Matt Brown's a tough customer, but eventually it was just too much for him to take, and he was overcome. The quickness of Cerrone's hands was really on display in that matchup as well. Where we have seen Cowboy struggle at lightweight, he had some issues with the boxing with Eddie Alvarez and Nate Diaz, guys that were able to push forward and really engage him. Rafael dos Anjos rocked him and had a lot of success hurting him, and eventually in the title fight hurt him to the body and eventually put him down and really pressured him. That was something we saw Cerrone struggle with a little bit. Cowboy has improved his wrestling, which was a nice counter to maybe that forward pressure. He took Cote down. He took Rick Story down. He will attack off his back if he's put on the mat. Decent takedown defense overall. I really like the way he limp legs out of a lot of single attempts, which is something we could see here against Masvidal. The aggression of Gamebred is going to be a key to his success if he wins this fight. He needs to push forward, keep Cerrone on his back foot, maybe short-circuit some of those kicks by being at boxing range and really go to work. When he fought Lorenz Larkin, who's another fighter who relies heavily on kicks and has a Muay Thai style, he had a lot of success pushing forward and being hit in his face early in that matchup, but eventually the speed of Lorenz and the variety of kicking and the aspects of Lorenz's game and the power really backed Masvidal off and made him routinely get off second in that fight and cost him that fight. Masvidal had a lot of trouble reaching Lorenz Larkin once he established kicking range and established that maybe Jorge doesn't want to be inside too close because he was taking some damage, and that was an issue. I think Cerrone is going to be able to have a similar front and a similar success with that offensive front. Cerrone's power and work rate are going to be the keys here. I think he's going to remain consistent. He's got more avenues to victory because Masvidal struggles in decisions, and I don't see him finishing Cerrone, where Cerrone I could see him finishing Masvidal or working a decision. It's going to be a fun fight. I think it's going to be a close fight. My prediction is Cowboy Cerrone to defeat Jorge Masvidal by decision. In the main event of the evening, we have a very closely lined fight, and for a good reason, because the winner of this matchup will be going on, most likely, we know how things work nowadays, to fight for the women's bantamweight title as the number 1 ranked Valentina Bullet Shevchenko of Kurdistan, 13 wins and 2 losses, takes on the number 2 ranked Juliana, the Venezuelan Vixen Pena, or the current record of 9 wins and 2 losses, the first ever women's Ultimate Fighter champion. Now, winner, as I said, gets a shot at Amanda Nunes. Shevchenko lost a 3-round matchup to Nunes that a lot of people felt if it was a 5-round fight, Shevchenko probably wins because she won the 3rd round. Pena was clearly fading, so that's a very interesting point to note. of how that fight played out. For Juliana, she's actually coming off a win over Kat Zingano, who took out Amanda Nunes in an earlier fight, in which Nunes dominated early, but Kat got the better of her and finished her. So Pena certainly has some momentum, some confidence going into this matchup, that if she gets through here, she could very well be holding the title belt in the not-too-distant future if she gets by Amanda, obviously, depending on how the Amanda Nunes fight goes. Pena 4-0 in the UFC, so certainly on a pretty sizable run. She is 1 inch taller, she'll have a 2 inch reach advantage, and Pena is the younger fighter by a single year. Now, experience certainly favors Shevchenko. She, especially with that kickboxing background, she comes from an extensive kickboxing background and a lot of fights. I believe it was almost 60 pro bouts, so certainly a big advantage for her. Both girls have finishing skills overall, but if you look at their records, Pena more recently has been putting opponents away, but both have taken recent steps up in competition, and we've seen them going the distance a lot more, which again tends to be a trend we will see overall. Looking at Juliana Pena first, she is a bully. She uses pressure and a clinch to break her opponents down. She'll establish overhooks, looks to land those knees, really control her opponent, shut them down, pin them against the wall, and drive those knees into the midsection. Very physical style, and then she'll look to go for takedowns. We have seen some issues she's had in the past. Giving up takedowns against Jessica Ai. She gave up the takedowns in the clinch position. Now, the thing is, she's a very good scrambler. Jessica Ai had some success shutting her down in the clinch using good head positioning, but for the most part, she was able to scramble her way after taking the fight to the ground or even pulling guard into a better position. She pulled guard at one point in that fight and eventually worked her way to a superior spot where she wanted to be. And it was a combination again of out-muscling Ai and that solid technique. When she fought Kat Zingano, she was put on her back early in that matchup. But again, she scrambled out of the spot, got into a better position, and went to work. As the fight progressed, she wore her opponent down, got the better of the grappling exchanges, and won that fight. For Pena, her striking tends to be a bit of a work in progress. She has a limited head movement overall. I had some success landing some strikes, but again, Pena is looking for one thing. It's to clinch up, close that distance, engage, and get to work with her close-range arsenal of both grappling and short-range striking. She will get cracked with some decent shots trying to close that distance, but that is key for her success, is get on the inside. Now, for Shevchenko, I start to wonder if she's been has a bit of a tendency to be a slow starter. Against Sarah Kaufman, she won the opening 2 rounds, lost the final round. It was a split decision win for her. But that wasn't more... I think the last 2 fights have been a little more indicative of that slow starting nature. Against Amanda Nunes, she lost the opening 2 rounds, very ineffectual early on before winning the 3rd round. Against Holly Holm, she lost the opening round, actually got dropped in that opening round by Holly Holm, but really rallied to take the next 4. That fight cost me a lot of money too. I had Holly to win that matchup, and I had a fantastic night leading up to it. Against Nunes, she simply failed to let her hands go. I had Shevchenko against Nunes in that fight, so certainly I've had some struggles picking the Shevchenko matchups. She failed to let her hands go against Amanda early on, and Amanda kind of dictated how that fight played out, and that cost Valentina in the grand scheme of things. Where Shevchenko has success, she wears her opponents down with volume. She's not a big power puncher. She keeps throwing and chipping away and doing damage and really discouraging you from attacking. We saw that against a very good striker in Holly Holm. She used a lot of kicks, quick knees on the inside, really attacks her opponent's inside leg, which is very effective over a long fight at simply taking away their base, making it painful to push forward, making it painful to engage, and making you second-guess your techniques because you're worried about getting cracked in that lower half. She tends to be a very good counter striker. Short, crisp punches on the inside, was outlanding Holm for the most part, and was really backing Holly off. Holly was not engaging, was not really willing to sit inside and take shots. And it got to the point where her outside range striking was not effective because she couldn't land it because she was unwilling to commit because she was getting countered every time she did. The other thing with Shevchenko, she's a very strong clinch fighter, very physical. She has landed 8 takedowns over her 3 fights, and we have seen that pre-UFC as well. It was kind of an unknown factor of her game. She can take opponents down from the clinch, out-muscle them, and put them on the ground and really control them. Now, Amanda Nunes did take her down, and Shevchenko didn't offer a hell of a lot off her back. She tied her up and tried to neutralize her, but it was a losing position. And again, it depends on the referee. If you can tie her up and hold her, will they stand you up, or will they eventually just let the person in top work to eventually break free and start landing those strikes? Either way, if you spend too much time on your back, you have to be active once you get to your feet to win the round. Shevchenko is coming off a 5-round fight where she fared very well. Pena has never gone that far, and she's only recently started to go deeper into matchups. Shevchenko has to be very careful not to allow Juliana to get that early start, to get rolling, to start to bully her or in that early round, put her on her back and beat her up. She has to get off to a sound start. I like the way Valentina is strong in the clinch. That really is going to take away from Juliana's biggest weapon. We saw Jessica Ai, who's not a known grappler, have success with head positioning and countering some of Pena's attempts to muscle her to the mat. And I think Shevchenko being the slightly lower statured fighter, that she's going to have some success shutting down Pena's attempts to put the fight on the ground. She's going to force Juliana to work very hard. It's going to force Pena. It's going to slow Pena down as the fight progresses if she can't obviously get the early finish. Valentina will win the striking exchange. She is a vastly superior striker, and she'll start to land. She'll start to hurt Juliana, and once Pena realizes she's not having success closing the distance, and she's getting cracked on the inside, she's going to become very tentative at range, is the way I see this playing out. I like to favor skill over physicality here. I'm not saying that Juliana Pena is unskilled. I'm just saying I think Shevchenko relies more on her technique, and Pena relies too much on her ability to just overwhelm her opponents and force them down. And over a 5-round fight, that might not be doing it if she has success early on, but she could equally as much tire herself out. If she can't get takedowns, so she's going to struggle on the feet against a superior striker. This could be a close fight. It could end up being a split decision. I'm hearing a lot of this, but I favor the striking, and I would not be surprised to see Shevchenko control some top position exchanges and really put Pena on the defensive on the mat. My prediction is Valentina Shevchenko to defeat Juliana Pena by decision. So those are my four main card predictions for UFC on Fox 23. All of my preliminary picks, as previously mentioned, will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Please check them out. The bet packs will also be on sale. I had a great showing. I'm off to a huge start. We'll see how long I can keep my loss total for 2017 in single digits. Of course, I'm trying to reach that 300 win plateau in a calendar year. The closest I've ever come is 299 fights. 299 victories. I had a shot this year, and I had some stumbling blocks in the final months that prevented me from getting there. But 10 fights, 10 wins in the first show of the year certainly gives me a great opportunity. We'll see if we can keep it rolling. The big thing is, let's make some money, people. We all want money. I want money. You want money. Let's do that. Let's keep it going. I should certainly consider buying my bet packs and see if we can keep things going. Follow me at Twitter, KO_predictions. I do my best to live tweet, but I'm a family man. I'm looking to put my kids to bed, and a lot of times I am putting them to bed when some of the fights are going on, which makes it very difficult to live tweet, but I do my best. I'm also there. People message me all the time, both on Facebook and Twitter, if they have questions or they concerns, they want to say, ask me something or request something. I do my best to accommodate as much as possible. I'm, for the most part, a one-man show. I get a couple guys that put their predictions up on my site as well, but a lot of everything else I do on my own. So I do my best I can. Hopefully you appreciate it. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I'll see you next, or I guess I'll be back here to talk. I don't see you guys. I always say I'll see you next time. I never do. I'll be back to talk at you next time. Take care, guys.